The crying came through the locked office door at 11:43 on a Thursday night. Not loud. Not dramatic. It was the kind of sound a person made when they had spent years learning how not to make one. Caleb Rowan stood in the empty corridor of Vale North headquarters with a tool bag in one hand and a work order in the other. The building was supposed to be silent. The executive floor had been cleared 2 hours earlier, but behind the frosted glass, someone was trying to breathe without being heard. He knew the voice before she spoke. Lydia Vale. Founder. Chief Executive. The woman whose name was carved into the stone above the lobby and whispered by employees as if it might hear them. Caleb should have kept walking. Instead, he noticed the thin line of light beneath her door, and he thought about all the doors people closed when they were afraid kindness would come through them. What he left outside that door before dawn was small enough to fit in his palm. By the end of the year, it would decide who owned the company, where his daughter would sleep, and whether Lydia Vale would ever let another human being see her cry again. If you believe one quiet act can reach a person when words cannot, tap like, and tell me who taught you to notice the people everyone else walks past. Caleb had not planned to be on the executive floor that night. He had planned to finish replacing 2 faulty motion sensors on the 7th floor, sign the maintenance log, pick up his daughter from his sister's apartment, and be home before midnight. At 37, he had learned not to build his life around ambitious plans. Plans had a way of becoming hospital corridors, unpaid invoices, and bedrooms where one side of the bed stayed cold. He built his nights around smaller promises instead. Be where you said you would be. Bring Wren her library book. Keep enough gas in the truck to get through Friday. Do not let the landlord hear fear in your voice. The work order on the executive floor had appeared in his queue at 10:56. Office 2401. Interior door dragging against frame. Priority. Immediate. It was not marked with Lydia Vale's name. It did not need to be. There was only one private office on the 24th floor, and only one person in the company who could make a dragging door an emergency after 10 at night. Caleb had worked in the building for 11 weeks, long enough to know that the executive floor operated by different laws. People there spoke more softly, walked faster, and looked at the elevators as if escape were always one meeting away. Lydia's assistants changed so often that Caleb stopped learning their names. Her chief of staff, Serena Holt, had lasted almost 4 years, which employees treated as evidence of either extraordinary competence or a complete absence of self-preservation. Caleb knew Lydia mostly through glimpses, a dark suit moving through the lobby with 6 people trying to match her pace, a still face at the head of a glass conference table, a voice over the building intercom during a winter pipe break, calm enough that no one panicked until the danger was gone. He had also seen the other things because maintenance people always did. The untouched dinners removed from her office at midnight, the cot folded behind a storage wall in the executive suite, the private elevator record showing she sometimes stayed 3 nights in a row, the framed photographs that had disappeared from her office after her father died, leaving pale rectangles on the wall. People who worked around power learned to become blind. Caleb had never been good at that. He set his tool bag down beside the door and examined the frame without knocking. The lower hinge had shifted. The heavy walnut door was rubbing near the threshold, but not enough to prevent it from closing. The repair could wait until morning. Behind the door, Lydia drew in a breath that broke halfway through. Then came a man's recorded voice, faint through the wood. Lyd, stop trying to carry the whole building. Buildings are meant to be held up by more than one wall. Silence, the message began again. Lyd, stop trying to carry the whole building. Caleb looked down at the work order. His thumb had pressed a crease into the paper. He understood replaying a voice. For 2 years after his wife died, he had kept Mara's last voicemail saved in 3 places. It was not profound. She had called from the grocery store to ask whether they needed laundry soap and to remind him that Wren's purple socks were in the dryer. There was traffic in the background. A shopping cart rattled. She laughed because she had forgotten why she called halfway through the message. He had listened to that laugh until the sound stopped feeling like comfort and started feeling like a locked room. Caleb took one step away from Lydia's door. A chair moved inside. Something struck the desk. Lydia spoke, her voice low and furious with itself. "I am trying." The recording played again. He should have left then. Instead, he looked at the dragging walnut door and remembered a scrap of maple in the workshop downstairs. Wren had been helping him sand it on Saturday while waiting for his shift to end. She liked the building workshop because every drawer had a label and every tool had a home. She had asked what the wedge-shaped scrap was for. A doorstop, he had told her. For doors that won't listen? For doors that are too heavy. She had considered that seriously, then taken a yellow paint marker from his drawer and drawn a crooked little window on one side. Caleb left the executive floor without fixing the hinge. He went down to the basement workshop, found the maple wedge on the shelf, and turned it over in his hand. Wren's window was no larger than his thumbnail. 4 uneven squares, a roofline, and a tiny dot that might have been a doorknob. He should not leave personal objects outside the CEO's office. It was not professional. It might be interpreted as intrusive. It might cost him a job he could not afford to lose. His checking account had $86 in it. Wren's class field trip payment was due Monday. His truck made a grinding sound when he turned left. His landlord had taped a notice to the apartment door that morning because Caleb was 14 days behind. He knew exactly what the job was worth. He also knew what it was like to sit behind a closed door and hope no one heard you breaking. From his locker, he took a square of brown wrapping paper and a length of plain string. He wrapped the doorstop, then tore a page from his pocket notebook. He wrote one sentence, "For doors that are too heavy." He did not sign it. At 12:17, he returned to the 24th floor. The light still showed beneath Lydia's door, but the recording had stopped. He placed the small parcel on the carpet, far enough from the threshold that the dragging door would not crush it, and walked away. He repaired the hinge at 5:40 the next morning, before the executive assistants arrived. The parcel was gone. Nothing else changed that day. Lydia crossed the lobby at 8, with Serena Holt beside her and 3 department heads behind them. Her expression was composed. Her stride was exact. She did not look toward Caleb, who was kneeling beside a floor outlet with a voltage tester. At 10, a message came through the facilities system. Office 2401. Door operating correctly. Close ticket. No comments. No name. Caleb closed it. By noon, he had convinced himself the object had been thrown away. That was fine. The point of leaving something at a door was not to control what happened after it crossed the threshold. At 3, the chief of staff appeared in the basement workshop. Serena Holt wore cream trousers, a navy blouse, and the expression of a person who had never arrived anywhere by accident. She stood beneath the fluorescent lights while Caleb tightened a clamp around a cracked chair leg. "Mr. Rowan?" He set down the driver. "Yes, miss. Vale wants to know whether you made this." She placed the maple doorstop on the workbench. Wren's crooked yellow window faced up. Caleb looked at it, then at Serena. "My daughter painted it." That was not the question. "I cut and sanded it. She painted the window. Why did you leave it outside Ms. Vale's office?" He could have lied. He considered it for less than a second. Her door was dragging. "I had a work order. The hinge was repaired before 6 this morning." "Yes." "Then why the doorstop?" Caleb wiped sawdust from his fingers. Sometimes fixing a hinge is not the same as making a door easier to open. Serena's expression did not change, but something in her eyes became more alert. "You understand that you overheard a private moment. I understand I was sent to repair a door, and you left an anonymous personal note for the chief executive." "I did. That is not normal conduct for a facilities employee." "No," he did not apologize. An apology would suggest he regretted noticing. Serena studied him for a long moment. "Ms. Vale does not like being observed. Most people don't when they're hurting. You are making assumptions. I'm not asking for information." The basement hummed around them. Air handlers, pipes, the distant metallic knock of an elevator car settling into place. Serena picked up the doorstop. "You may be contacted by human resources. I understand." She turned to leave, then stopped. Your daughter, she said without looking back. How old is she? 7. Serena nodded once and left. Caleb spent the rest of the shift waiting to be fired. He did not tell Wren. She had enough concerns for a 7-year-old. A spelling test, a loose tooth. The fact that their upstairs neighbor's cat seemed to prefer Caleb's windowsill. Children should not have to carry the weight of adult uncertainty simply because adults were tired. He picked her up from his sister Anna's apartment at 6:30. Wren came down the stairs wearing one red sock and one blue sock, her hair held back by a clip shaped like a strawberry. You said you would bring the library book, she said before she hugged him. He held up the book. She examined the cover. You bent the corner. It was already bent. That is what people say when they bend corners. Anna leaned against the doorway behind her. She cross-examined me about a missing juice box for 20 minutes. It was labeled, Wren said. Caleb crouched so she could climb onto his back. I am surrounded by investigators. He carried her to the truck, listening to her describe the class project she had been assigned. The students had to build a model of a room that made people feel safe. Wren planned to make a library because libraries had rules against shouting. Caleb smiled, but the word safe stayed with him. Their apartment was on the second floor of a narrow brick building near the river. The kitchen faucet leaked. The hallway light buzzed. The living room window faced a wall close enough that sunlight entered only in a thin band each afternoon. It was not the home he had imagined for Wren. It was home anyway. They ate tomato soup and grilled cheese at the small kitchen table. Wren dipped the sandwich corners into the bowl and asked why grown-ups always said they were fine when they were not. Caleb looked at her. Where did that come from? Mrs. Danner cried during art class and said she was fine. Maybe she did not want to talk about it in front of the class. Then she should say, I am not fine, but I do not want to talk about it. That is very specific. It is more accurate. He thought of Lydia's office door. Yes, he said. It is. The human resources call came at 8:12 the next morning. Caleb was told to report to conference room B on the 23rd floor. He arrived at 8:20 in a clean work shirt with his employee badge clipped straight and his hands smelling faintly of machine oil. Serena sat at one end of the table. A woman from Human Resources sat beside her with a tablet. Lydia Vale sat across from them. It was the first time Caleb had been close enough to see the fine exhaustion beneath her makeup. She wore charcoal gray. Her dark hair was pulled into a low knot. Her face gave nothing away. The maple doorstop rested on the table between them. The Human Resources Director began. Mr. Rowan, we need to discuss a boundary concern involving executive privacy. Caleb sat down. All right. You were assigned to repair in Miss Vale's office late Thursday night. Outside the office. The door was locked. You remained in the corridor after determining the repair could wait. For less than 2 minutes. You overheard private audio. I heard a recorded voice and Miss Vale speaking. I did not attempt to hear more. Lydia's eyes stayed on him. And afterward, the director continued. You created and left a personal item with a handwritten message. The item already existed. That distinction is not relevant. It was to my daughter. The director paused. Lydia spoke for the first time. Why didn't you sign the note? Her voice was quieter than it was in meetings, but not softer. Caleb answered her directly. Because it was not meant to create an obligation. What obligation? To thank me. To explain anything. To pretend it helped. And if it did not help, then it was a piece of wood outside a door. Lydia touched the paper note with one finger. The sentence had been folded into a small square. For doors that are too heavy, she read. The Human Resources Director shifted. Mr. Rowan, do you understand why this could be experienced as inappropriate? Yes. Would you do it again? Caleb thought about his rent, Wren's field trip, the grinding truck. He thought about giving the answer that would keep his life simple. No, would have been easy. Instead, he said, not in the same way. Serena closed her eyes for half a second. The director looked surprised. Explain. I would knock first if I believed there was immediate danger. I would leave if there was not. but I will not promise to become the kind of person who hears someone falling apart and decides it is more professional not to care. The room went still. Lydia looked down at the doorstop. When she raised her eyes, the composure had returned completely. "Leave us," she said. The director glanced at Serena. "Both of you." Serena stood. The director followed. Neither looked at Caleb as they left. The door closed. Caleb and Lydia sat across from each other with 20 feet of polished table between them. "You could lose your job for speaking that way," she said. "I know. You need this job." "I do. How badly?" He did not like the question. He answered it anyway. "My daughter and I are 14 days behind on rent. My truck needs repairs. I have $86 until next Friday." Lydia's expression tightened, not with pity, with recognition of leverage. "And you still chose that answer." "I chose the true answer. Truth is often a luxury, only when the lie is free." For the first time, Lydia looked almost caught off guard. She leaned back. "What did you hear?" "Enough to know I should not repeat it. That is not an answer. It is the only one I am giving." Her eyes sharpened. Caleb had seen executives use silence as pressure. Lydia used it like architecture. She built a room around a person and waited to see whether they would shrink inside it. He waited. At last she said, "The man on the recording was my father." Caleb did not respond. "He died 11 months ago. I'm sorry. I did not ask for sympathy. That was not sympathy." "What was it?" Recognition. Something moved across her face and vanished. She picked up the maple wedge. "Your daughter drew this?" "Paint marker. It is a house." She said, "Doors need to know what they belong to." Lydia turned it over. On the bottom, Wren had written a small W that Caleb had not noticed. "What is her name?" "Wren. Unusual. Her mother chose it." Lydia's gaze lifted. "Where is her mother?" "She died 4 years ago." The answer sat between them, not a bid for closeness, a fact with weight. Lydia placed the doorstop back on the table. "I am not firing you," she said. Caleb let out a breath through his nose. "Do not look relieved. I have not decided whether that is kindness." "I wasn't going to call it that." "Good." She slid a folder across the table. "What is this?" he asked. "A problem no one in this building has solved without making it worse." Inside were photographs of a vacant company-owned apartment tower 3 miles east. Water damage. Broken railings. Peeling paint. A courtyard full of dead planters. "We acquired the property 18 months ago," Lydia said. "The redevelopment budget doubled. The contractor walked. The city has threatened condemnation. My operations team wants to sell at a loss." Caleb looked through the inspection reports. "Why are you showing me?" "You were a site supervisor before you joined facilities. 6 years ago. You left after your wife died." He looked up. "You read my file. You left a piece of your daughter's work outside my office. I read everything." Caleb returned to the photographs. "What do you want?" "A second opinion. From a maintenance technician. From a man who is willing to tell me the truth when it is expensive." She stood, gathering the folder from his hands. "Be at the property tomorrow at 7. My shift starts at 8. It starts at 7 tomorrow." She reached the conference room door, opened it, then paused. The walnut door did not drag. Without turning, she said, "Bring the person who painted the window." Caleb stared at her back. "My daughter?" "The building has been empty for a year. I want to know what a child sees when adults have already decided a place is worthless." Then she left. The property stood between a tire warehouse and an abandoned elementary school. 12 stories of brown brick facing a narrow strip of river. At 7 the next morning, the sky was the color of wet concrete. Caleb parked beside a chain-link fence and looked up at the building while Wren finished a banana in the passenger seat. The top-floor windows reflected the clouds. Several lower windows had been covered with plywood. A faded brass sign near the entrance still read Reverglen Residences, though someone had pried away half the letters. "Is this where the important lady lives?" Wren asked. "No, then why did she ask me to come?" "She wants your opinion." Wren considered this. About a broken building? About whether it is only broken? That is not the same question. No. Caleb unbuckled her booster seat. You stay beside me. You do not touch exposed wires, broken glass, or anything that looks wet unless I say it is safe. What if the wet thing is water? Especially then. A black sedan arrived as they crossed the lot. Lydia stepped out wearing a long dark coat and flat boots that looked expensive enough to be offended by the mud. Serena emerged from the other side carrying 2 binders and a tablet. Lydia's eyes moved from Caleb to Wren. Wren looked back without the caution adults usually showed her. You are shorter than the building, she said. Caleb closed his eyes briefly. Wren. Lydia's mouth moved at one corner. It was not a smile. It was the memory of one. So are you, she said. That is because I am 7. I have no such excuse. Wren nodded as if Lydia had answered correctly. Serena unlocked the gate. The structural engineer is meeting us inside. They entered through a lobby that smelled of plaster dust and old rain. The terrazzo floor was cracked near the elevators. Mailboxes lined one wall, their brass doors hanging open like missing teeth. Someone had left a plastic tricycle in the corner, one wheel turned inward. Lydia stopped beside it. The last tenants were relocated 18 months ago, she said. Most accepted settlements. 5 are still in litigation. Why were they relocated? Caleb asked. The acquisition plan called for a full luxury conversion. That is not what I asked. Serena looked at him. Lydia did not. The previous owner deferred maintenance. We discovered major plumbing and electrical failures after closing. Occupancy could not continue safely. And the tenants believed the failures were used to force them out. Lydia's gaze turned toward him. You read the case summaries. I read the public filings last night. Why? You said you wanted the truth. The engineer arrived, a narrow man named Owen Pike, whose hard hat was so clean it seemed ceremonial. He led them through the first floor, listing faults in the detached tone of someone who had already written the building's obituary. Corroded risers, outdated electrical panels, mold in the north stairwell, roof membrane failure. Elevator modernization required. Full rehabilitation would exceed $14 million, Pike said. Demolition and sale of the cleared parcel remains the most defensible option. To whom? Caleb asked. Pike glanced at Lydia before answering. Several developers have expressed interest. At what price? That would be a matter for executive review. It is in the folder, Lydia said. $9.2 million. Caleb looked up the stairwell. You paid 16. 18, including relocation and legal reserves, Serena said. Wren had been silent for almost 4 minutes, which was how Caleb knew she was thinking hard. She pointed toward a row of hooks beside the old mailboxes. Why are there little names? Caleb crouched. Several hooks still held metal tags. 3B, 7F, 9A, 4 keys, he said. No, the words. Beneath the apartment numbers, someone had written names in faded marker. Mrs. Larkin, the Garcias, Theo and June. M. Bell, people lived here a long time, Caleb said. Wren looked at Lydia. Did you know them? No, then how did you know they wanted to leave? The question landed without accusation because Wren did not yet know how to weaponize innocence. Lydia looked at the names. They were paid to leave, she said. That is different. Caleb touched Wren's shoulder. Let's keep moving. But Lydia remained where she was. Pike cleared his throat. The mechanical room is this way. They spent 3 hours in the building. Caleb opened panels, photographed pipe chases, tested pressure, and climbed to the roof. He found damage, but he also found evidence of repairable systems buried beneath years of neglect. The main structure was sound. The courtyard drains had failed because 2 lines were blocked, not because the entire system needed replacement. Half the electrical estimate assumed premium finishes for luxury units that no one had yet approved. In an 8th-floor apartment, Wren stood at a window overlooking the river. This room gets the sunset, she said. The unit had peeling wallpaper and a stain across the ceiling. A child's height marks remained on the kitchen doorframe, 4 pencil lines with dates beside them. Wren traced the air near the marks without touching them. Someone grew here. Lydia stood behind her. Yes, are you going to erase it? The question seemed to trouble Lydia more than the financial numbers. I don't know, she said. Wren looked back at the room. You could paint around it. At noon, Serena took Wren to the sedan for the sandwich Caleb had packed. Caleb and Lydia remained in the apartment with the river light flattening the dust into silver. What do you think? Lydia asked. Caleb leaned against the counter. I think your estimate was built for a different project. Meaning? 14 million assumes luxury conversion, imported fixtures, full facade replacement, and demolition of partitions that do not need to move. If you keep the basic layouts, replace systems in phases, use durable finishes, and stop treating every unit like a brochure, you could make it safe for under 9. That is still 9 million. You would keep the building. For what? He looked through the doorway at the old height marks. Housing. That is not a business plan. It used to be enough of one. Her expression cooled. Sentiment does not service debt. Neither does selling an $18 million acquisition for 9. She folded her arms. You think I do not know that? I think everyone around you is presenting 2 choices because they assume you only respect expensive answers. Luxury conversion or demolition. There is a third. Affordable housing. Workforce housing. Family units. Long-term leases. Keep the tenants who want to return. Partner with the hospital and the school district. They both have employee shortages because people cannot afford to live near their jobs. You developed that in 3 hours? I developed it in 6 years of watching tradesmen drive 90 minutes because every project they built was priced beyond them. Lydia turned toward the window. Caleb continued. You own 3 other underused properties within 5 miles. If the model works here, it is not charity. It is a portfolio. I did not ask for a portfolio. You asked whether the building was worthless. She looked at him again. And is it? No. What is it worth? That depends on whether you count only what can be sold. Her jaw tightened. You are drifting back into sentiment. No, I am telling you the market value is 9.2 today. The operating value after rehabilitation could be more. The reputational value of bringing families back is more than that. The legal exposure drops if you offer right of return. The city may provide tax incentives. Your problem is not that the building has no value. It is that your company forgot how to recognize value that does not arrive wearing marble. For several seconds, Lydia said nothing. Then she walked to the kitchen doorframe and studied the pencil marks. My father started with 2 6-unit buildings, she said. He did the repairs himself because he could not afford contractors. Caleb waited. By the time I joined the company, we owned 43 properties. He hated the word luxury. Said it made people pay extra to be lonely. Was he wrong? She glanced at him. You enjoy dangerous questions. No, I just keep getting invited into dangerous rooms. A brief sound left her, almost a laugh, cut off before it fully existed. Serena returned with Wren. Lydia turned professional again. I want a written rehabilitation scenario by Monday. Caleb stared at her. I work in facilities. You worked in construction planning. I have a full shift and a child. You will be paid consulting hours. At what rate? Serena's eyebrows rose. Lydia named a number nearly 3 times his hourly wage. Caleb did not react quickly enough. Is that acceptable? She asked. Yes, then Monday. Tuesday, Monday, I have Wren. Until 8, I work 8 to 5. And I am not giving you a number I cannot defend because you dislike Tuesdays. Lydia looked at him with the same recalculating expression she had used in the conference room. Tuesday at 9. Tuesday at noon. 10, done, Wren tugged Caleb's sleeve. Is that how important people make plans? No, Serena said before anyone else could answer. That is how these two make trouble. The next 4 days became a second job layered over the first. Caleb worked his regular shift, picked up Wren, made dinner, helped with homework, and then opened the River Glen files after she went to bed. He spread inspection reports across the kitchen table. He rebuilt the budget using actual labor rates, phased system replacement, local suppliers, and a design standard based on durability rather than display. He called 3 former subcontractors who still answered his calls. He spoke to a property manager at the county hospital. He found a city program offering partial abatements for workforce housing within transit corridors. He read tenant lawsuits until 2 in the morning. Wren woke once and found him asleep at the table with his cheek against a plumbing schematic. She covered him with a blanket from the sofa and placed a sticky note on his hand. Do not drool on building. By Tuesday, his truck's grinding sound had become a metallic cough. He parked 2 blocks from headquarters because he did not trust the company garage ramp. At 10, he presented the plan to Lydia and Serena in the executive conference room. He had no slides. His laptop was too old to connect reliably to the display, so he brought printed pages, a legal pad, and a foam board Wren had helped label with colored tabs. Lydia looked at the board. Did your daughter design this? She insisted red tabs meant danger and green meant things adults should stop arguing about. Serena touched one of the green tabs. What does this one mean? Do not replace the courtyard trees. Why? Because birds live there, Caleb said. Lydia looked at the proposal. The plan reduced the projected cost to $8.4 million, divided across 3 phases. It preserved 112 units. 27 former households could return if they chose. Vale and North would reserve 60 units for employees of the nearby hospital, school district, and transit authority under master lease agreements. The city incentives would offset part of the rehabilitation. The company could reach positive cash flow in 6 years without selling the land. Lydia read every page. She did not skim. She marked assumptions, questioned labor rates, challenged the vacancy model, and asked why Caleb had budgeted for a full-time resident coordinator. Because a building full of families is not managed by an email address, he said. She circled the line item. Expensive, so are preventable problems. What happens if the hospital refuses the master lease? The school district needs 42 units. The transit authority needs 30. You diversify. What happens if rehabilitation discovers concealed structural damage? Contingency reserve. Too small. Then increase it and extend the payback period by 8 months. What happens if the board rejects the entire premise? Caleb looked at her. That is not a construction question. No, it is the only question that matters. Serena set down her pen. Lydia moved to the window. Below them, the city looked orderly from 24 floors up. Streets became lines. People became movement. Problems became small enough to categorize. The board meets in 9 days, she said. They intend to vote on a sale of River Glen and 3 other properties. To the same developer? Caleb asked. Yes, who? Archer Meridian. Caleb knew the name. Everyone in local construction did. Archer Meridian specialized in buying distressed urban properties, clearing them, and replacing them with high-rent mixed-use towers. Their projects photographed beautifully and displaced people with equal efficiency. Your chief financial officer used to work for them, he said. Lydia turned. Julian Voss left Archer 8 years ago. Does he support the sale? He designed it. There was no suspicion in her tone, only exhaustion. Caleb looked at Serena. And the other properties? 2 apartment buildings and a commercial block, Serena said. All underperforming, or all sitting on land Archer wants. Lydia's voice hardened. Be careful. I am asking. You are implying my chief financial officer is engineering asset sales for a former employer. I am implying the same person defined the assets as failures and chose the buyer. That is something I would check. Julian was my father's closest advisor. Then checking should not threaten him. Lydia's eyes went cold. You repaired a door and prepared one budget. Do not confuse access with authority. Caleb felt the warning exactly as she intended. He gathered his papers. You asked what happens if the board rejects the premise, he said. The answer is that Riverglen gets demolished and you lose $9 million. What happens after that depends on whether the sale was a bad decision or someone's good decision for reasons you have not examined. He left before she dismissed him. For 2 days, Lydia said nothing about Riverglen. Caleb returned to facilities work. A broken lock on 12, a flooded restroom on 9, a delivery bay sensor that failed whenever it rained. He told himself the consulting assignment had ended. The extra hours on his paycheck covered Wren's field trip and half the rent. The truck still ground when he turned left, but for the first time in weeks, he bought groceries without adding the total in his head before reaching the register. On Thursday evening, he found the maple doorstop beneath Lydia's office door. The door was open 6 inches. He stood in the corridor with a replacement air filter under one arm. Inside, Lydia sat at her desk reading the Riverglen proposal. The office looked different with the door open. Less like a sealed chamber, more like a room. She did not look up. You were right about the tax incentive. Caleb waited. It increases if 20% of the units are reserved for public sector employees below the median income threshold. Yes. You used the old percentage. The city website had not updated the downloadable guide. I called the housing director. That sounds like checking. She raised her eyes. Do not enjoy this. I am not enjoying it. You are visibly enjoying it. Only the part where the number improves. She pushed a folder toward the edge of the desk. Julian's sale model assumes demolition costs are paid by the buyer. The draft agreement shifts environmental remediation back to us. How much? Potentially $3 million. So the 9.2 sale is closer to 6. Yes, and the board package says 9.2. Caleb set down the filter. Did Julian know? The clause was added by outside counsel 3 weeks ago. He initialed the revision. The office became very quiet. Lydia's face did not show betrayal. It showed calculation moving over an older wound. My father trusted him, she said. Your father is not reviewing this agreement. Her gaze snapped toward him. Caleb did not soften the sentence. Dead people could not remain responsible for the living simply because the living were afraid to disappoint them. Lydia looked down at the doorstop wedged beneath the walnut door. You were supposed to be in the basement, she said. You left the door open. I needed the filter replaced. The request said tomorrow. I changed my mind. He understood then that this was as close as she could come to asking someone to stay. Caleb replaced the filter while she worked. He did not fill the room with conversation. When he finished, he gathered the old filter and headed for the door. Mr. Rowan, he turned. I need you at the board meeting. No, Lydia blinked. Excuse me? I am not qualified to address your board. You built the alternative plan. I built cost assumptions. You are the CEO. I need someone who can defend the practical model. You have project directors. They already told the board the property should be sold. Then make them explain why they were wrong. Her patience thinned. I am offering you direct access to the board of a company worth $400 million. And I am telling you, I have a facilities job I need to keep. If the board hates the plan, I become the maintenance man who embarrassed their CFO in public. I can protect your position. Can you? The question stopped her. Caleb looked at the papers spread across her desk. You do not know yet who is with you. Until you do, promises are not protection. What do you want? A temporary project contract. Written, 6 months. Reporting to operations, not Julian. If the board approves Riverglen, I manage the rehabilitation assessment. If they reject it, I return to facilities without retaliation. You negotiated this in the corridor? I thought about it when you stopped speaking to me for 2 days. Something almost warm appeared in her eyes. Serena will draft it. Then I will attend. He reached for the doorstop to close the door behind him. Leave it, Lydia said. Caleb looked at the small painted house holding the heavy door open. He left it where it was. The board meeting took place the following Wednesday in a room designed to make disagreement feel expensive. 12 leather chairs surrounded a table cut from a single slab of black walnut. Portraits of former company presidents watched from the walls. At the far end hung a photograph of Lydia's father, Graham Vale, standing in front of the company's first 6-unit building with a hammer in one hand. Julian Voss arrived last. He was 58, silver-haired, composed, and familiar with every person in the room. He greeted Lydia with a hand on her shoulder that lasted half a second too long. "You look tired," he said quietly. "I am prepared." That was not what I said. He noticed Caleb standing beside Serena. "And this is?" "Caleb Rowan," Lydia said. "He developed the Riverglen Rehabilitation Alternative." Julian's smile remained, but its meaning changed. "The facility's employee. Former construction site supervisor," Lydia said. "How enterprising." Caleb had met men like Julian on job sites. They never raised their voices. They made contempt sound like good manners. The meeting began with quarterly results. Occupancy, debt service, insurance exposure, a hotel renovation in Louisville. By the time Riverglen appeared on the agenda, 2 hours had passed, and everyone was hungry enough to prefer certainty over thought. Julian presented first. He described the 4 properties as non-core assets burdened by deferred maintenance, legal exposure, and weak returns. He emphasized the clean exit offered by Archer Meridian. He showed a map of future development around the river corridor. He used the word discipline 6 times. Then Lydia spoke. She did not mention Caleb at first. She walked the board through the environmental clause, the actual net sale value, the city incentives, and the workforce housing demand. She did not accuse Julian of hiding information. She simply placed the missing information where everyone could see it. When questions turned to construction feasibility, she nodded to Caleb. He stood. His work jacket had been replaced by the only suit he owned, purchased for Mara's funeral and altered badly at the sleeves. He felt the difference between himself and the room in every scene. He also knew the building. He answered questions about plumbing phases, tenant safety, elevator work, labor availability, and contingency. When a board member asked whether the old height marks should be preserved, Caleb realized Wren's observation had made it into Lydia's presentation. "The marks are on one door frame," he said. "They do not affect the budget. Then why are we discussing them?" Julian asked. Lydia answered, "Because buildings contain evidence of what they were built for." The board member looked toward her father's photograph. Julian closed his folder. "This is emotionally appealing. It is not financially responsible. The sale agreement you negotiated would net nearly $3 million less than the board was told," Lydia said. "The remediation clause is standard allocation language subject to final negotiation. You initialed it. As evidence of review, not approval. You did not disclose it." Julian's expression remained patient. "Lydia, I have spent 11 months trying to keep this company stable while you grieved. I made the recommendation that best protected liquidity." The room shifted at the word grieved. Caleb saw Lydia's fingers tighten against the table. Julian continued, almost gently. "Your father would not want you risking the company to prove you can still save every building he touched. It was not an attack made in anger. It was worse. It was a wound presented as concern." Lydia looked toward her father's photograph. For one dangerous second, Caleb thought she might retreat. Then her eyes moved to the open conference room door. The maple doorstop held it in place. She had brought it. "No," Lydia said. "My father would want the numbers stated correctly." Julian's face changed at last. Lydia turned to the board. "I am requesting 90 days to complete a full rehabilitation assessment and secure conditional master leases. No construction commitment. No additional capital beyond $400,000 for design, testing, and legal resolution. At the end of 90 days, the board votes again with verified information." A director near the window raised his hand. "And the Archer offer?" "Held open for 60 days, Julian said. 75, Serena corrected. The extension arrived this morning. Julian looked at her. The vote was 7-5. Reverglin received 90 days. No one celebrated. Julian gathered his papers with the care of a man placing knives back in a drawer. As the directors filed out, he stopped beside Caleb. "You gave a clear presentation," he said. "Thank you. You should understand that clarity can be mistaken for authority in rooms where authority is borrowed." Caleb met his gaze. "Then it is good the numbers belong to everyone." Julian smiled without warmth and left. Lydia remained at the table. The victory had not relieved her. It had exposed the cost of the next 90 days. Serena collected folders. "I will have the project contract finalized by this afternoon." "Make it 12 months, Lydia said. Caleb looked at her. "You asked for 6. Yes, I am correcting an assumption." "Which one?" "That this can be done in 6 months." He almost argued. Then Lydia reached down, removed the small doorstop from beneath the conference room door, and placed it in his hand. "Your daughter loaned me this," she said. "I need to return it properly." Caleb closed his fingers around the painted maple. "What does properly mean?" "Dinner, Saturday, my house." He stared at her. Serena did not look up from the folders, but Caleb saw the beginning of a smile. Lydia's expression became defensive before he had answered. "This is not social. I want Wren's view of the preliminary unit designs. She is 7, so everyone keeps telling me she charges in cookies. I can afford cookies." For the first time, Lydia smiled fully. It changed her face so completely that Caleb understood why people who had known her before grief kept waiting for her to come back. Then, the smile disappeared, and the room was only a room again. But he had seen it. Lydia's house stood above the river on a wooded hill, all limestone, glass, and controlled silence. Caleb arrived Saturday at 5:58 with Wren beside him and a bakery box balanced on one palm. His truck looked small in the circular drive. One of the left turns on the way up had produced a sound so violent that Wren had asked whether the wheel was still attached. "It is," Caleb had said. "How do you know?" "We arrived. That does not prove it is attached correctly." Now she carried the maple doorstop in both hands, as if returning a museum piece. Lydia opened the door herself. She wore dark trousers and a soft gray sweater. Without the hard lines of a suit, she looked younger and more uncertain. The uncertainty vanished the moment she noticed Caleb noticing it. "You are early," she said. 2 minutes. Early is still early." Wren held out the doorstop. "You can keep it." Lydia looked at the painted wedge. "Your father said it was a loan. He says that when he is worried, someone will not accept a gift." Caleb closed his eyes. "We brought cookies. I see that." "The bakery made them," Wren added. "Dad makes bad cookies because he thinks measuring is a suggestion." Lydia stepped aside. "Come in." The entrance hall rose 2 stories. A floating staircase curved along one wall. The windows framed the city beyond the trees. Everything was beautiful in the way expensive houses often were, selected with care and touched without evidence. Wren turned slowly. "Where do you keep the messy things?" Lydia considered the question. "There is a utility room." "No, drawings, shoes, mail you forgot to open." "I do not forget to open mail. That sounds tiring." Caleb touched Wren's shoulder. "Remember our conversation about personal questions?" she answered. Lydia took the doorstop from Wren. "The messy things are upstairs." It was the first honest invitation of the evening. Dinner had been arranged in a smaller room off the kitchen rather than the formal dining room. Serena had apparently convinced Lydia that 3 people did not need a table built for 16. There was roast chicken, potatoes, green beans, and bread. Wren inspected each dish as though the CEO might have attempted a trick. "Did you cook?" she asked. "No, good." Caleb coughed into his hand. Lydia looked at him. "Why is that good?" "Dad said people who work all the time forget how to make toast." "I said some people. You were talking about her. I was making a general observation." Lydia cut a potato. "I can make toast." "On purpose?" Wren asked. A laugh escaped Caleb before he could stop it. Lydia stared at him for 1 second, then laughed too. It was brief, real. The room changed around it. After dinner, Lydia brought out the preliminary Riverglen floor plans. She spread them across the kitchen island while Wren stood on a stool. The architects had proposed neutral finishes, compact kitchens, and shared laundry rooms on alternating floors. Wren approved of the deep window ledges because children could sit there. She objected to the gray walls. Why? Lydia asked. Gray is what adults choose when they do not want to be wrong. Caleb leaned against the counter. I have no idea where she gets these things. You, Lydia said. Wren pointed to the laundry rooms. People will lose socks. That happens in every laundry room, Lydia said. Then you should make a sock shelf. A what? A shelf for socks that lost their person. Lydia wrote it down. Caleb watched her. You know she is serious. So am I. They moved through the plans. A small homework room near the lobby. Lockable stroller storage. Courtyard tables positioned where parents could see the play area. A repair workshop with weekend classes for tenants. That one was not in the architect's plan, Caleb said. It is now, Lydia replied. Wren drew a yellow square beside the courtyard. What is that? Lydia asked. A door. There is already a door. This one stays open. Lydia's pen stopped. Wren looked between the adults. You have a lot of doors that close by themselves. No one answered. Later, while Wren explored the library with permission to touch anything below the second shelf, Caleb helped Lydia gather the plans. You did not have to invite us here, he said. I wanted her opinion. You could have asked at the office. Lydia aligned the paper edges. The office makes everyone perform. And this house does not? She looked around the immaculate kitchen. It used to. Caleb waited. My father held dinners here every Sunday. Executives, contractors, tenants, anyone he thought should know one another before they had a reason to disagree. After he became ill, the dinners stopped. After he died, I closed most of the rooms. Why? Because an empty room is easier to tolerate when it looks intentional. The sentence came without drama. That made it heavier. Caleb rested his hands on the island. Mara used to leave cupboard doors open. Every one. I complained about it for 9 years. After she died, I closed them all for about a week. Then I started leaving one open by accident. Why? I think part of me wanted to be annoyed at her again. Lydia looked at him directly. Did it work? For a while. Wren called from the library. Dad, there is a book here about a girl who lives in a wall. Please do not try it. I am reading. That is how it starts. Lydia lowered her eyes, smiling. When it was time to leave, she walked them to the front door. The maple wedge was already beneath it, holding the heavy glass and wood panel open to the night. Wren noticed. You used it correctly. I had instructions. Wren hugged Lydia without warning. Caleb saw Lydia's arms remain at her sides for one suspended second. Then she bent and returned the embrace carefully, as if holding something breakable she had not been trained to carry. On the drive home, Wren watched the hill disappear behind them. She is lonely, she said. That is not ours to fix. I did not say fix. Caleb glanced at her in the mirror. What did you say? She is lonely. The difference stayed with him. Riverglen became the center of Caleb's life for the next 6 weeks. His mornings began at the property with contractors and inspectors. His afternoons were spent at headquarters defending budgets. His evenings belonged to Wren, though sometimes Riverglen entered the apartment through phone calls and rolled plans that took over the kitchen table. Lydia was everywhere. At 7 in the morning, walking through wet courtyards in boots that gradually stopped looking new. At noon, challenging the mechanical engineer until he admitted half his replacement estimate was based on specifications from the abandoned luxury plan. At 9 at night, sending Caleb a revised lease model with 3 questions and no greeting. She did not become easy. She became present. There was a difference. She learned the names of the former tenants. She met Mrs. Larkin, who had lived in 3B for 22 years and still carried her old key on a ring. She sat across from the Garcia family in a community center and listened while they described being given 30 days to leave after the acquisition. She did not defend the company. She did not ask them to understand her intentions. She apologized for the result. The apology cost her. Caleb could see it afterward in the parking lot, where she stood beside the sedan with both hands in her coat pockets. "You did not have to come," he said. "Yes, I did. Most CEOs would send counsel. My counsel wrote the relocation notices. That is not the same as you." "No," she said. "It is how I avoided knowing that." She looked toward the community center doors. "My father would have known their names. You are not your father." Her expression tightened. Caleb continued before she could misread him. "You do not have to become him to correct what happened." She studied his face. "Do you rehearse these sentences?" "No. You should. They might be less irritating." He smiled. "I will consider it." The project began to change shape. The hospital signed a conditional letter for 38 units. The school district requested 26. The city agreed to fast-track permits if Vale and North preserved a portion of the former tenant's right to return. A local credit union proposed a financing package tied to energy upgrades. Every success created another problem. The roof testing revealed asbestos in a service enclosure. The elevator contractor doubled its lead time. Two board members who had supported the 90-day assessment began asking whether the company should outsource the entire project to Archer Meridian anyway. Julian Voss attended every budget call. He was courteous, helpful, patient. He questioned Caleb's experience without appearing to question Caleb. He requested documentation in formats that took hours to produce. He insisted all contracts flow through finance, then delayed approvals because the project lacked final board authorization. When Lydia challenged him, he reminded her that his job was to protect the company from enthusiasm. Enthusiasm, Caleb said after one meeting, is apparently the technical term for work he did not choose. Lydia stood beside the open office door, the maple wedge beneath it. "Julian has always been cautious. He is not cautious. He is slowing us down. You believe everyone who disagrees with you is obstructing you." "No. Owen Pike disagrees with me about the roof sequence. He also returns calls and provides numbers. Julian asks for the same report 3 ways, then says the inconsistency concerns him." Lydia rubbed a spot between her eyes. "You need sleep," Caleb said. "I need final bids. You can need both. You are becoming comfortable." You left the door open. Her hand dropped. Neither of them looked at the doorstop. One Friday, Caleb's truck finally stopped pretending it could continue. The left front bearing failed 3 blocks from Wren's school. He pulled into a grocery store lot with the wheels shuddering and smoke curling from the hub. The repair estimate was more than he had saved from the River Glen contract. He sat behind the steering wheel while Wren drew circles in the fog on the passenger window. "Are we in trouble?" she asked. "We have a problem." "That is not what I asked." He looked at her. "A little," he said. She nodded, accepting the accurate answer. Caleb arranged for the truck to be towed and called Anna. She was working a double shift at the clinic and could not pick them up for 2 hours. The grocery store cafe was closing. Rain had begun to strike the windshield. He was considering the bus route when a black sedan pulled into the lot. Lydia stepped out under an umbrella. Caleb stared at her through the glass. Wren brightened. The important lady. Serena had seen Caleb's message canceling the afternoon site walk and told Lydia. Lydia had asked why. Serena, who had apparently become an organized threat to Caleb's privacy, had checked the project contact sheet for Wren's school and reconstructed the likely route. "You did not need to come," Caleb said when Lydia reached the truck. "You say that often." "Because you keep arriving places you do not need to be. Move the booster seat. We can take the bus. It is raining. We own coats." Caleb. It was the first time she had used his first name. The sound of it ended the argument more effectively than authority would have. They transferred Wren's school bag and the booster seat to the sedan. Lydia held the umbrella over Wren while Caleb unhooked the seat. Half her shoulder became wet. In the car, Wren explained wheel bearings to Lydia using information she had learned 7 minutes earlier. "They keep the wheel from becoming angry." "That is not exact," Caleb said. It is what happened. Lydia looked out the window, hiding a smile. She drove them home herself after dismissing the company driver. Caleb sat beside her in the front. The sedan was quiet enough that he could hear the rain moving over the roof. You could have sent a car, he said. I was already coming. You were at headquarters. I was already coming after I decided to come. That sentence is not improved by confidence. She glanced at him. Your truck is unsafe. It is also currently unmovable. How much is the repair? No, I did not finish the question. You were going to offer money. I was going to ask whether the project transport allowance covers a rental. Caleb paused. Does it? It will. That is different, I know. At the apartment, Lydia helped carry Wren's backpack upstairs. She stopped in the narrow living room, taking in the patched sofa, the stack of library books, the rain bucket near the window. In the model room Wren was building for school. It was a small cardboard library with yellow paper windows and a blue door propped open by a tiny folded wedge. Lydia crouched beside it. You added the door. Safe rooms need ways out, Wren said, and ways in. Lydia looked toward Caleb. He busied himself with hanging wet coats. They ordered pizza because the groceries were still in the disabled truck. Lydia stayed because Wren asked whether CEOs were allowed to eat on floors. The kitchen table was covered with Revergland plans, so they sat in the living room around the coffee table. Wren placed the largest slice on Lydia's plate. You need it, she said. Why? You are thin and angry. Wren, what? Dad says people are meaner when they forget lunch. Lydia took a bite. Your father has discussed me extensively. He says you are difficult. Caleb put down his slice. I did not use that word. You said working with her is like carrying a ladder through a hallway where someone keeps moving the walls. Lydia turned toward him. He considered denial, then abandoned it. It was a long day. To his surprise, she laughed. Not the brief, cautious sound from dinner at her house. A full laugh. She covered her mouth halfway through as if embarrassed by its volume. Wren smiled because she had caused it. Caleb watched Lydia's face change again. This time she did not close it immediately. After Wren went to brush her teeth, Lydia stood by the apartment window. The wall across the alley filled most of the view. How long have you lived here? 2 years. Before that? A rental house near Mara's parents. They sold it after she died. Why? They needed the money. I could not buy it. Lydia touched the edge of the cardboard library. You built houses for other people. Commercial interiors. Apartments, mostly I built schedules and solved problems. But not one for her. Caleb leaned against the doorway. I gave her a home. It just did not have the shape I expected. Lydia looked down. My father left me a company, 3 houses, and enough money to avoid almost any ordinary fear, she said. I have spent 11 months making all of it feel like a sentence. The confession was quiet and flat. No tears. No dramatic collapse. The wound finally named in the plainest words. Caleb did not move closer. What happened the night I heard you? He asked. She kept her eyes on the model. The board had sent me a private recommendation asking me to take a leave of absence. Julian drafted it. They said grief had affected my judgment, that I had become isolated, erratic, over-involved in minor decisions. Were they wrong? She looked at him sharply. Not entirely, she said. That does not mean they were right about the solution. My father's message was from the week before he died. He knew I was sleeping at the office. He told me to stop carrying the whole building. And you replayed it because? Because he was the person who taught me to carry it. There it was. Not abandonment by a lover. Not a single betrayal. A lifetime of being trained for a weight and then blamed for bending beneath it. Lydia continued, still toneless. When he became ill, I promised the company would not weaken. I missed his last Sunday dinner because I was negotiating a refinancing package. He died that night. Julian was with him. I was in a conference room. Caleb thought of Mara's last voicemail. Laundry soap. Purple socks. The ordinary details people turned into verdicts because death did not provide a cleaner final scene. You believe being there would have changed something, he said. No, you believe not being there proves something. She did not answer. That is different. Wren returned wearing pajamas patterned with moons. Are you staying for the story? Lydia looked startled. What story? Dad reads before bed. I should go. You can sit in the chair. Caleb started to intervene, then stopped. Lydia could say no. She looked at the rain on the window, then at Wren. One chapter, she said. They read a story about a girl who lived inside a wall and listened to the family in the house until someone finally heard her knocking back. Lydia sat in the old armchair. Wren leaned against Caleb on the sofa. Halfway through the chapter, Lydia's phone vibrated twice. She turned it face down. When the chapter ended, Wren asked the question children asked because they had no respect for emotional timing. Are you Dad's boss or his friend? Caleb closed the book. Lydia's stillness returned. I am his employer, she said. That was not one of the choices. Then your question is incomplete. Wren frowned. Can people be both? Lydia looked at Caleb. He did not rescue her from the answer. Yes, Lydia said at last. Sometimes Wren accepted this and climbed down from the sofa. At the door, Lydia paused with her hand on the knob. Caleb had no doorstop there. The apartment door was light enough to hold with one foot. Thank you for the pizza, she said. You paid for it. Then thank you for the floor. Any time. The phrase came out before he measured it. Lydia heard what was inside it. So did he. She left without answering. On Monday morning, Julian Voss canceled the Revergland transport allowance. The cancellation appeared as a one-line email copied to 6 people. Effective immediately, all discretionary Revergland expenditures require direct finance approval. Project vehicle reimbursement is suspended pending scope review. Caleb read it in the rental car outside Riverglen while rain tapped the windshield. The weekly rental was already charged to his card. He had enough available credit for 4 more days. Lydia called before he could call her. Do not respond to Julian. I need transport to 3 sites today. I will handle it. You should have handled it before he canceled something you approved. A pause. You are angry. I am calculating. That is my line. It is not a line. He heard voices behind her, the tight movement of an executive morning already underway. Come to headquarters, she said. We will resolve it. No, I have the fire marshal at Reverglen in 20 minutes. Caleb, you hired me to run the assessment. Let me run it. He ended the call before she could answer. The fire marshal found 2 issues that could be corrected within budget. The elevator contractor reduced its lead time after Caleb agreed to phase modernization by car. The hospital sent a revised letter increasing its requested units from 38 to 46. By noon, the project had gained more value than Julian's canceled allowance could cost. At 1:15, security officers arrived. They did not enter like police. They came with careful faces and a woman from corporate compliance named Marissa Kent. Caleb was standing in the old lobby with 3 rolled plans under his arm. Mr. Rowan, she said, we need your company laptop and badge. He looked at the officers, then at her. Why? There is an active investigation into unauthorized access and disclosure of confidential board materials. What materials? The Archer Meridian Sale Analysis and Environmental Addendum. I did not access board files. Records show your credentials downloaded them Friday at 11:38 p.m. Caleb had been at home Friday at 11:38, reading the Wall Girl story to Wren for the 3rd time. My laptop was in my apartment. Then we will need it. It is in the site office. She held out her hand for his badge. Caleb did not move. Has the information been disclosed? He asked. Marissa glanced at the security officers. A tenant attorney received the documents early this morning. The timing was precise. The right file, the right recipient, the right employee to blame. Caleb removed his badge. Call Lydia Vale. She has been notified. Did she authorize this? Marissa's expression gave him the answer before her words did. The suspension was approved by the chief executive pending investigation. For several seconds, Caleb heard only the rain against the lobby windows. He handed over the badge. At headquarters, Lydia stood in her office with the door closed. The maple doorstop sat on her desk. She had removed it from the threshold after Julian entered with the compliance report. She had not noticed herself doing it. Julian sat across from her, hands folded. "I know what you want to believe," he said. "This is not about belief." "Good. Then look at the access log." "I have." The files were downloaded using his credentials. His device connected through the corporate network. 4 hours later, the tenant attorney received them. He had no reason to leak them. He has every reason. The leak strengthens the tenant litigation and creates public pressure for the rehabilitation plan. He becomes indispensable. That is absurd, is it? You promoted a facilities employee into a project role. You brought him into board deliberations. You have allowed him direct access to you. Lydia's voice went cold. Choose your next words carefully. Julian looked toward the closed door. The board already believes your judgment has become personal. It has become informed. He was at your home. The fact landed like contamination. Lydia stared at him. How do you know that? Company vehicle records. Serena's expense approval. This is exactly the kind of blurred boundary the board feared. He came with his daughter to review family space designs. I am not accusing you of misconduct. You are using the shape of one. Julian's expression softened. I am trying to protect you. Again, the word again carried her father's final night. The board's leave recommendation. The 11 months in which Julian had stood beside her while quietly narrowing every choice. Lydia looked at the compliance report. What is the required action? Immediate suspension. External forensic review. Freeze the Reverglin project until the breach is resolved. Freezing the project triggers the expiration of 2 conditional letters. Then the project was too dependent on one employee. Lydia knew the trap. Refuse suspension, and she appeared compromised. Approve it, and Julian gained the delay he needed. She signed. Not because she believed Caleb had leaked the documents. Because she believed truth could survive procedure. It was the kind of belief people with power often held because procedure had rarely been designed to break them. Caleb learned the difference that afternoon. He waited outside the compliance office for 3 hours. He answered questions about his passwords, devices, conversations with former tenants, and contact with the attorney. He gave permission to examine his personal laptop. He listed every person who had entered his apartment in the previous month. When he finally left the building, his badge no longer worked at the parking garage. The rental car sat inside. Security escorted him to retrieve it. Employees watched from the lobby without appearing to watch. Some looked curious, some embarrassed. One of the junior facilities workers looked afraid, as though Caleb's trouble might be contagious. Lydia did not come down. He drove to Anna's clinic to pick up Wren. The rental company called while he waited and informed him the corporate authorization had been withdrawn. He had until 6 to return the car or assume the full weekly charge. His own truck remained at the repair shop. The mechanic would not release it without partial payment. At 5:30, Caleb returned the rental. At 6, he and Wren took 2 buses home in cold rain. She noticed his missing badge before they reached the apartment. Did you lose it? No. Did they take it? Yes. Why? They think I did something I did not do. Does the important lady think that? Caleb looked through the bus window at water running over the city lights. I don't know. That was the part that hurt. Not the suspension, not the lost car, not the whispers in the lobby. The closed door. At home, a bright envelope waited beneath the apartment door. Final notice. The landlord had given them 5 days to pay the balance or face formal eviction filing. Caleb stood in the narrow hallway with the notice in one hand and Wren's wet backpack in the other. He had enough money to pay either the truck repair or most of the rent. Not both. Wren read the red words. Are we losing the apartment? He wanted to say no. Instead, he crouched in front of her. I am going to solve it. That is not an answer. He closed his eyes. We might have to stay with Aunt Anna for a while. Wren pressed her lips together. She did not cry. That made it worse. Can we bring the library? She asked. The books belong to the library. Our cardboard one. Yes, and Mom's blue cup? Yes, and the blanket with the hole? Yes, she nodded. 3 things. A child's inventory of home. Caleb made grilled cheese. Neither of them ate much. At 8:40, someone knocked. He opened the door to find Lydia in the hallway. She wore the same charcoal suit from the morning. Her hair had loosened near one temple. She held no umbrella, no bag, no visible plan. Caleb did not invite her in. You approved the suspension, he said. Yes, do you think I leaked the files? No, then why? Because refusing would have compromised the investigation and given Julian grounds to involve the board directly. You froze the project. Temporarily, the hospital letter expires in 9 days. I know. The school district's expires in 12. I know. My contract allows suspension during misconduct review. My facility's position does not have the same protection if they terminate for cause. I will not allow that. Caleb laughed once without humor. Can you? The same question he had asked before the board meeting. This time she had no answer. Wren appeared behind him in moon-patterned pajamas. Are you taking Dad to jail? Lydia's face changed. No, then why is he sad? Wren, go finish brushing your teeth. I already finished. Please. She looked at Lydia, then at Caleb, and went to the bedroom. Lydia lowered her voice. The forensic team will clear you. When? Within 72 hours. And if they don't, they will. You are talking like the process is neutral. It is independent. It is paid by your company using evidence supplied by the finance office, while the man who benefits from the delay controls half the systems they are reviewing. Her eyes sharpened. Julian does not control information security. He controls budget, access approvals, and the contractor who installed the board portal. Lydia stopped. Caleb saw the thought arrive. The contractor, she said. Northgate Systems. Archer Meridian used them on 3 developments. Their founder appears in Julian's old company filings. How do you know? I looked at vendor records when his reports kept changing format. I wanted to know who built the system. Why didn't you tell me? I did not have evidence. Only a reason to check. Lydia looked past him into the apartment. The eviction notice lay on the table, red text visible beneath the kitchen lights. What is that? Not your problem. Caleb, do not offer money. I was going to ask what happened. You approved my suspension. The project allowance ended. The rental went back. My truck is in a shop. I was already behind. Her face went still. I did not know. That is the problem with closing doors. The sentence struck both of them. Lydia looked toward the floor, where no wooden wedge held anything open. I came here because I did not want you to hear about the suspension from compliance, she said. I did. I was in an emergency board call. You had my number. I did not know what to say. Caleb's anger loosened slightly, not because the answer was enough, but because it was true. Lydia continued. I believed I could use procedure to protect you while I challenged Julian. I was wrong. The admission cost her more than an apology would have. What happens now? He asked. I find proof. And Riverglen? I keep the letters alive. And me? She met his eyes. I ask you not to leave. You suspended me. I know. You cannot ask me to work off the books. I am not. I am asking you not to decide what this means before I have a chance to correct it. Caleb thought of the boardroom, the open office, the drive in the rain, the way she had sat on his floor and turned her phone face down. Then he thought of Wren carrying 3 pieces of home in her mind. I have 5 days before eviction, he said. That is the clock I live under. Not 72 hours. Not the next board cycle. Lydia nodded slowly. I understand. No, you understand the sentence. He began to close the door. She did not stop him. Before the latch caught, she said, Your daughter gave me something when my door was heavy. I do not know what to leave at yours. Caleb looked at her through the narrowing space. Truth, he said. Start there. He closed the door. The next morning, Lydia entered headquarters through the public lobby instead of the private garage. She wanted people to see her arrive. Serena met her at the elevator with coffee and a list of the overnight developments. The tenant attorney had posted the environmental clause online. A local reporter had requested comments. Archer Meridian had threatened to withdraw its offer. 2 board members demanded that Riverglen be abandoned immediately. Julian? Lydia asked. In his office since 6. Compliance? Northgate's logs are being supplied through finance. Stop that. Bring in an outside firm of our choosing. Not Julian's. Serena nodded. Already called 3. Lydia looked at her. I assumed you would reach the same conclusion eventually, Serena said. Why didn't you say something before? You were protecting a man your father trusted. I was waiting for you to decide whether that trust was evidence or inheritance. Lydia absorbed the sentence. Choose the firm with no current vendor relationship, she said. She entered her office. The door closed behind her because the maple wedge was not there. She stood looking at the threshold. Then she took the doorstop from her desk, placed it beneath the walnut door, and pushed until the room opened to the corridor. Serena, her chief of staff, turned. Move my meetings out here today. Into the open office area? Yes, why? Because secrecy is currently helping the wrong person. For the next 14 hours, Lydia stopped behaving like someone defending herself and began behaving like someone examining a building. She traced load paths. Northgate Systems had administrative access to the board portal for maintenance. Its emergency access account had been activated Friday at 11:31 p.m. The login appeared under Caleb's credentials because the credential mirroring tool had copied his authenticated token from the project laptop when it connected to headquarters earlier that day. The tool was supposed to support remote troubleshooting. It had never been disclosed in the security documentation. The activation request came from an internal finance service account. The account was used by 4 employees. 3 were home at the time. 1 had entered the building at 10:52 p.m. Julian Voss. That was not proof he had activated the account. It was enough to widen the investigation. Lydia asked for the executive floor camera records. The camera outside finance had been offline for maintenance from 10:30 to midnight. Authorized by Northgate. She requested parking records. Julian's car had left at 12:06. She requested his call logs. At 11:49, he had called a number associated with an Archer Meridian legal consultant. Still not proof. A pattern. At 3 in the afternoon, Lydia met Julian in the boardroom. He arrived calm. You replaced the forensic firm, he said. I expanded the review. You are interfering with an independent process because you dislike its direction. I am examining a vendor conflict you did not disclose. Northgate has worked with half the city, including Archer, years ago. The founder remains your personal investment advisor. For the first time, Julian's composure thinned. That is irrelevant. You listed him as an unrelated vendor contact. He does not advise the company. He advises you. Julian leaned forward. Lydia, listen to yourself. You are tearing through private records to defend a contract employee you have known for 2 months. I am reviewing a security breach. You are trying to prove a conclusion because you need him to be innocent. The accusation found its target because part of it was true. Lydia did need Caleb to be innocent. Not only because of Riverglen. Because he had heard her at her weakest and had not used it. Because his daughter had drawn a window on a piece of scrap wood. Because he had looked at the worst room in her and treated it as a room, not a verdict. But need was not evidence. She returned to the documents. At 11:49 Friday, you called Everett Lane at Archer Meridian. Julian's eyes changed. Everett handles shared litigation matters. Which matter? I would have to review the call note. You have no call note. Then it was informal. 3 minutes after the download completed. Julian sat back. You think I framed him? I think you will submit your devices to the outside firm. No, the word was quiet. Lydia looked up. You required Caleb to surrender his. Caleb is an employee under investigation. I am the chief financial officer. Then your responsibility is greater. My responsibility is to the company, not to your emotional experiment. Lydia felt the room become very clear. Submit the devices, she said, or I place you on administrative leave. You do not have board authority. My employment agreement gives me emergency authority in matters of suspected financial or information misconduct. You use that authority, and I will call a special board meeting. They will remove you before sunset. Then call it. Julian stared at her. Lydia understood what her father's death had changed. For 11 months, she had thought the company was the last room where he still existed. She had protected every person he trusted, every system he built, every old promise, because changing them felt like losing him again. But a building did not honor its architect by preserving rot behind the walls. Your devices, she said. Julian stood. You are choosing a maintenance man over the person who sat beside your father when he died. No, Lydia said. I am choosing verification over inheritance. He left without surrendering anything. The special board meeting was scheduled for the following morning. Lydia had less than 18 hours. At 6, Serena entered with a paper cup of coffee and a small brown envelope. This was delivered by internal mail, she said. Inside was a key. Apartment 8C at Riverglen. Mrs. Larkin's old key. There was a note in the former tenant's careful handwriting. Mr. Rowan told us a locked door is not proof a home is gone. I believe him. I hope you do too. Lydia held the key beside the maple doorstop. 2 objects. One from a child who saw a house in scrap wood. One from an old woman who still carried a building after the building had stopped carrying her. Lydia called the hospital administrator, the school superintendent, the city housing director, and the credit union president herself. She told each of them the project was under internal review. She did not ask them to ignore the leak. She asked for 72 hours. The hospital gave her 5 days. The school district gave her a week. The city gave her nothing in writing, but the housing director said the permit clock would not move before Monday. At 8:30, Lydia drove to Caleb's apartment. This time she brought no corporate explanation. She brought a folder, a copy of the access logs, and Mrs. Larkin's key. Caleb opened the door wearing a faded sweatshirt. Wren slept on the sofa beneath the blanket, with the hole. Cardboard boxes stood against one wall. You packed, Lydia said. Some things. I found the mirrored token. He read the first page of the report. Northgate, Yes, and Julian refused to surrender his devices. He called a board meeting for tomorrow. What happens there? He asks them to remove me. Caleb looked at her. And you came here. I said I would bring truth. He read the report again. This clears my device. It proves the download could be created without your action. The outside firm will issue an interim finding by morning. Could? We do not yet have the command source. So I am not cleared. Not fully. He handed the report back. Then why are you here? Lydia placed Mrs. Larkin's key on the small table beside the eviction notice. Because tomorrow I am going to tell the board that Riverglen is not a side project. It is the direction the company should have taken years ago. Caleb said nothing. A portfolio of practical mixed-income family housing near essential employers, she continued. Rehabilitation before demolition. Long leases. Resident services. Local trade training. Buildings designed around daily life instead of photographs. The board barely approved one assessment. I know. You are going to ask them to approve a new business line while they consider removing you. Yes, that is either very smart or evidence for their case. I have not decided. He looked toward Wren asleep on the sofa. What do you call it? He asked. Lydia opened the folder to a single-page concept note. Open door living. Caleb's eyes moved to her face. The name may be too sentimental, she said. No. It is exactly sentimental enough. She breathed out. I need you there tomorrow. I am suspended. As the person accused. Not as a witness invited by the chief executive. That sounds like a distinction your board will hate. They already dislike me. Caleb looked at the boxes, the eviction notice, the sleeping child. I cannot work for you if I have to wonder whether you will close the door every time someone makes trust look foolish. Lydia accepted the sentence without defense. I know. And I cannot build a project around families needing stable homes while my own daughter is packing hers. Lydia's eyes moved to the boxes. I can fix the rent without giving you money. How? Your contract includes a suspension clause requiring continued base compensation unless misconduct is confirmed. Finance stopped the payment authorization. That violates the contract Serena drafted. Caleb stared at her. I ordered payroll to release it tonight, she said, not as a favor, as money the company owes you. His anger shifted, looking for somewhere to stand. How much? 3 weeks of base project compensation and the transport allowance through today. It was enough to pay the rent, retrieve the truck, and buy groceries. Not charity, not rescue. A contract honored because someone finally read the clause that protected the person with less power. Caleb sat down at the kitchen table. Lydia remained standing. You knew I would refuse help, he said. I learned. You learned fast. I had a difficult instructor. He looked at the open door living page. What do you need from me tomorrow? The truth about the project. Nothing more. And if they remove you, then the plan exists. Serena has copies. The partners know the model. Reverglin will be harder to bury. Caleb looked at Mrs. Larkin's key. Wren shifted beneath the blanket and opened her eyes. Are we still moving? She asked. Caleb turned toward her. Not this week. She sat up. Did the important lady fix it? Lydia answered before he could. No, your father's contract did. Wren considered this carefully. Did she read it? Yes. Then she helped the contract. Lydia looked at Caleb. He smiled despite himself. Wren rubbed her eyes. Are you friends again? Caleb and Lydia said nothing. Wren sighed. Adults make easy questions difficult. She lay back down. Lydia moved toward the door. Caleb followed her into the hallway. At the threshold, she turned. I left the doorstop at the office, she said. Then leave the door open. I intend to. He should have let her go. Instead, he reached past her and held the apartment door before it could swing closed. Lydia, she looked back. I will be there tomorrow. The relief in her face lasted only a second. It was enough. The board assembled at 9 the next morning. No portraits looked different. No chairs had moved. But the room no longer felt designed to make disagreement expensive. It felt designed to make truth wait its turn. Lydia arrived with Serena on her right and Caleb on her left. He wore the same funeral suit, the sleeves still too short. His suspension badge had not been restored, so a security officer escorted him through the executive floor. Employees saw. This time, Caleb did not lower his eyes. Julian sat near the head of the table with outside counsel beside him. 3 directors joined by video. A printed packet waited at every seat. At the center of the table, Lydia placed 2 things. The maple doorstop. Mrs. Larkin's key. Julian noticed both. This is a governance meeting, he said. Not a presentation. Correct, Lydia replied. We will begin with the security breach. The outside forensic investigator joined by screen. She summarized the interim findings in plain language. Caleb's credentials had been replicated through an undocumented remote administration tool controlled by Northgate Systems. His personal laptop had not initiated the download. The device was inactive at the time. The token was used from an address assigned to a Northgate maintenance gateway. The command source had been deleted. A backup log remained. The request originated from an internal finance administrator account. The board turned toward Julian. He did not flinch. 4 people have access to that account. The investigator nodded. Correct. We examined authentication factors. 3 users were logged out and their devices were outside the building. The 4th user approved a Northgate emergency session from a company phone at 11:29 p.m. Whose phone? A director asked. The investigator looked down at her report. Mr. Voss's. Julian's counsel leaned toward him. Julian spoke before the whisper ended. I approve multiple vendor sessions every week. That does not mean I directed the download. No, Lydia said. It means Caleb did not. The investigator continued. Northgate's founder had called Julian at 11:22. Julian had called Archer Meridian's legal consultant at 11:49. The tenant attorney received the documents at 3:56 the following morning from an encrypted address later traced to a Northgate relay service. The final attribution would require more work. The pattern was enough. A board member named Helen Marr closed the packet. Julian, did you authorize Northgate to access the board portal that night? I authorized emergency maintenance. What emergency? I was told there was a synchronization failure. Where is the service ticket? There may not be one. It was handled verbally. By whom? Julian's silence lasted 1 second too long. The investigator answered. Northgate has not provided the engineer's name. Its founder has retained counsel. The boardroom changed. Not dramatically. No one raised a voice. No one called Julian a liar. People simply stopped arranging their faces around his authority. Lydia looked at Serena. Restore Mr. Rowan's credentials and end the suspension. Outside counsel objected. The investigation is not complete. The evidence excludes his device and ties the access to finance-controlled authorization. Continuing his suspension would be punitive without basis. Helen Marr nodded. Agreed. The board voted. 10-2. Caleb was cleared. Julian's administrative leave followed by a vote of 9-3. He was instructed to surrender his devices and leave company property pending the final report. He closed his folder. For years he had understood the room better than anyone in it. He knew when to challenge, when to soothe, when to invoke Graham Vale's name. He had treated Lydia's grief as both weakness and leash, tightening it whenever she moved toward a choice he did not control. Now the leash lay on the table where everyone could see it. Julian stood. I protected this company when you were not capable of doing so, he said to Lydia. She looked at him without anger. You protected the version that needed you most. I sat with your father while he died. I know. He trusted me. I know. And this is what that trust is worth? Lydia's eyes moved briefly to her father's portrait. Then back to Julian. Trust is not a permanent exemption from evidence. No triumph, no cruelty, just the end of an old arrangement. Julian left with security. The door closed behind him. For several seconds, the board remained silent. Then Helen Marr said, We still need to discuss Lydia's leadership and the Reverglin exposure. The second battle began without giving anyone time to recover from the first. A director from Chicago argued that Lydia's personal involvement had created unacceptable reputational risk. Another said Julian's conduct proved the sale process was compromised, but did not make rehabilitation wise. The company's debt ratio remained high. Interest rates had moved against them. Reverglin's budget had risen after asbestos testing. Archer Meridian's offer would expire in 2 days. Lydia listened. When they finished, she stood beside the screen. I have spent 11 months trying to prove I could preserve the company my father left, she said. That was the wrong objective. The room quieted. A company is not preserved by keeping every old decision untouched. It is preserved by remembering what problem it was built to solve. She showed the photograph of Graham Vale in front of the first 6-unit building. He did not begin with luxury towers. He began with apartments working families could afford near the places they worked. We moved away from that because premium development produced faster returns and cleaner photographs. Reverglin exposed the cost. The next slide showed the actual sale value after remediation. Then the rehabilitation model. Then letters from the hospital, school district, and transit authority. Then photographs of former tenants holding their old keys. Caleb spoke when Lydia reached the construction plan. He explained the phased budget, the verified bids, and the 12-month schedule. He did not speak like a man asking wealthy people for permission to have a good idea. He spoke like a builder explaining where the weight would go. The structure is sound, he said. The failure is in the systems. Systems can be replaced, without destroying what they were meant to serve. Lydia looked at him when he said it. The sentence belonged to the building. It belonged elsewhere, too. Serena presented the financial strategy for Open Door Living. Riverglen would become the pilot. 2 additional properties would enter assessment, not immediate construction. The company would create a separate operating division with capped initial capital and quarterly board review. Master leases would stabilize occupancy. City incentives and energy credits would reduce cost. Resident services would be funded through employer partnerships rather than hidden in rent. Helen Marr asked the question everyone had avoided. Who runs it? Lydia answered, I will remain chief executive. Serena will oversee company integration. Caleb Rowan will serve as director of rehabilitation and resident design. Caleb turned toward her. This title had not been discussed. Neither had the word director. Lydia continued before he could react. Subject to his acceptance and the board's approval of an employment agreement that protects independent cost reporting. A director near Julian's empty chair frowned. He has no executive experience. No, Lydia said. He has experience correcting executive assumptions. A few people smiled. The director did not. This looks personal. Lydia placed both hands on the table. It is informed by proximity. So was our trust in Julian. The difference is that Caleb's work is documented, tested, and open to review. She did not deny that it was personal. She refused to let personal mean unserious. The vote on Open Door Living came at 12:31. 6 in favor, 6 against. Under the bylaws, the chair held the deciding vote. The chair was Helen Marr. She looked at the photographs, the letters, the model, and finally the 2 objects at the center of the table. What is the piece of wood? She asked. Lydia's composure flickered. A doorstop. I can see that. It was left outside my office on a night when I had stopped allowing anyone inside. No one moved. Lydia touched the crooked yellow window. A child painted it. Her father left it without a name because he did not want gratitude. Only an opening. Caleb felt the room turn toward him. He wished it had not. He also understood that some truths could not be defended while hidden. Lydia lifted Mrs. Larkin's key. This key belonged to a woman removed from Riverglen after living there 22 years. She gave it back to us because Caleb told her a locked door was not proof a home was gone. Helen Marr looked at Caleb. Did you say that? Yes. Do you believe it? He thought of the apartment boxes. Marr's blue cup. Wren's cardboard library. Lydia replaying her father's voice in a sealed office. Yes, Helen cast the deciding vote. Open Door Living was approved. Riverglen would not be sold. The room did not erupt. There was no applause. People gathered papers and began discussing committee schedules before the emotional fact had fully landed. That was how large decisions often arrived. Quietly surrounded by administrative language. Lydia remained standing beside the screen. Caleb approached after the directors began to leave. Director of Rehabilitation? He said. You object? You did not ask. I was under time pressure. That excuse is becoming familiar. You can decline. What is the salary? She named it. Caleb stared. Is that acceptable? I need to see the contract. Her mouth curved. Of course. And I report to operations, not directly to you. The curve disappeared slightly. Why? Because Wren was right. People can be employer and friend. It becomes dangerous if no one knows when they are which. Lydia absorbed this. Serena? She called. The chief of staff looked up. Draft the reporting line through your office. Serena nodded. Already did. Caleb looked between them. Do I have any authority in this company? Only over buildings, Serena said. And socks, Lydia added. The lost sock shelves were approved. The final forensic report arrived 6 days later. Julian had directed Northgate's founder to create the mirrored access session. His plan had been layered. Leak the environmental clause to intensify tenant pressure. Frame Caleb, removing the person capable of keeping Riverglen alive. Force Lydia to choose between defending Caleb and appearing compromised. Then present the Archer sale as the only stable exit while the board questioned her judgment. Archer Meridian denied knowledge of the framing, but withdrew from all negotiations. Northgate lost its contract and faced civil action. Julian resigned before the board could terminate him. He sent Lydia one letter. She did not burn it. She did not frame it. She read it once and placed it in the legal file where it belonged. By spring, Reverglen was full of sound again. Not finished. Alive, workers opened walls and replaced corroded risers. Electricians pulled new wire through old chases. The courtyard drains were cleared. The trees remained. One elevator returned to service while the second was rebuilt. The old mailboxes were restored because Wren said new ones would not know where anyone had been. Caleb spent his days in steel-toed boots and his evenings reviewing budgets with Serena. His office was a small room on Reverglen's ground floor with a window facing the courtyard. The door stayed open unless he was on a private call. Wren came after school 3 afternoons a week. She did homework at a folding table and maintained the lost sock shelf before any laundry room existed. Workers began leaving clean stray gloves there as a joke. Lydia visited almost every day. At first, she arrived with a driver and a schedule. Later, she came alone. She learned which workers preferred coffee and which former tenants wanted updates by phone rather than email. She stopped wearing pale coats to muddy sites. She kept a pair of work boots in the trunk. She and Caleb argued about nearly everything: cabinet durability, courtyard lighting, whether the lobby needed a desk staffed until midnight, whether 6 trees were enough. They also learned how to stop arguing. Caleb learned that Lydia became quiet when she was hurt and precise when she was afraid. Lydia learned that Caleb joked when he was exhausted and grew formal when he felt vulnerable. Neither used the knowledge as leverage. That was trust in its practical form. Wren watched them with the patience of a child waiting for adults to catch up to obvious facts. In May, Caleb's new salary allowed them to move. He did not choose Lydia's neighborhood. He did not choose a new luxury apartment offered through the company. He rented a modest 2-bedroom house 10 minutes from Riverglen with a small backyard and a kitchen wide enough for 2 people to pass without turning sideways. Wren chose her room because it had a sloped ceiling and a view of a maple tree. On moving day, Lydia arrived carrying 3 boxes and no assistance. "You did not have to come," Caleb said. "I was already coming after I decided to come." He smiled. Still not a good sentence. She carried Mara's blue cup into the kitchen with both hands. "Where does this go?" "Top shelf. Left side." "You are certain?" "No, but Wren is." Wren directed the placement of books, blankets, and the cardboard library, now bent at one corner. She placed it on a shelf in the living room. The front door kept swinging shut because the floor sloped slightly. Caleb searched a box for a rubber wedge. Lydia reached into her coat pocket and removed the maple doorstop. Wren's yellow window had faded. The edges were worn from months beneath heavy doors. "I thought you kept it at the office," Caleb said. "I did. Then why is it here?" Lydia crouched and placed it beneath the front door. "Your daughter gave it to me for a door that was too heavy. This one is not." Wren looked at her. "Then why use it?" Lydia met Caleb's eyes. "Because some doors should stay open anyway." Caleb felt the answer move through the room. He had spent months refusing to name what was growing between them because he did not want gratitude mistaken for love, dependence mistaken for belonging, or power mistaken for choice. Now he saw that Lydia had been doing the same, not avoiding feeling, protecting its honesty. Wren walked outside to inspect the maple tree, leaving them in the open doorway. Lydia stood. "I declined dinner at your apartment the first night because I was afraid accepting one kindness would create a debt," she said. "You accepted pizza later. I was under pressure." He smiled. She did not. "I do not know how to do this without turning it into a decision document." "Then don't." "I have tried not to need you. That is not the same as choosing me." "I know." Her voice shook slightly. "I choose you." The words were simple enough to be trusted. Caleb stepped closer, but not all the way. "What does that mean?" he asked. "It means dinner when there is no floor plan. It means I learn how to make toast on purpose. It means I do not use the company to solve your life. It means if you say no, Your job remains exactly where it is. A rule of 3, then a fourth, because she needed the protection stated fully. Caleb looked at the woman in front of him. Not the CEO in the portraits. Not the daughter carrying a building. Not the grieving voice behind a locked door. Lydia, I choose you too, he said. He kissed her in the doorway, while the small wooden wedge held it open. The kiss was quiet. No witness but the empty street, and a 7-year-old behind the maple tree pretending not to watch. When they separated, Wren called, "Does this mean she is a friend now?" Caleb laughed. Lydia closed her eyes. "Come inside," Caleb called. Wren returned with grass on her knees. She looked from one adult to the other. "Are you going to make the easy question difficult again?" Lydia knelt so they were eye level. "I am your father's friend," she said, "and I care about both of you. We are going to go slowly and tell the truth when something feels strange." Wren considered this. "Can you still be a CEO?" "Yes, can Dad still tell you when your ideas are bad?" He appears unable to stop. "Then okay." She hugged Lydia. This time Lydia's arms did not hesitate. Reverglin opened its first completed units in September. Mrs. Larkin returned to 3B. The Garcia family chose a larger unit on the 6th floor. The hospital filled its allocation within 2 weeks. Teachers moved in. Bus mechanics. Nurses, a widowed cafeteria manager with twin boys. A young couple caring for an elderly parent. The old height marks in 8C remained unpainted. A clear panel protected them, with a small plaque that read, "Someone grew here." The courtyard reopened on a warm Saturday. Children ran between the preserved trees. Families carried food to long tables. The repair workshop displayed its first-class schedule. The laundry room lost sock shelves already held 3 socks, a mitten, and one small shoe no one could explain. The event was supposed to include speeches. Lydia shortened hers to 4 minutes. She thanked the city, the partner employers, the workers, the returning residents, and the team. She did not describe herself as transformed. She did not turn Caleb into a savior. This building did not need someone to rescue it, she said. It needed people willing to stop calling it worthless before they had looked inside. Then she handed Mrs. Larkin the first restored key. Caleb stood near the back with Wren on his shoulders. Lydia found them when the applause ended. Wren held out a new wooden wedge. This one was cut from a piece of Reverglin's original maple stair rail. She had painted 3 windows on it. "One for each of us," she said. Lydia took it carefully. "Where does this one go?" "The front lobby. The lobby doors are automatic." Wren sighed. "It is symbolic." Caleb looked away to hide his smile. They placed the new doorstop on a small shelf beside the restored mailboxes. It did not need to hold anything, it only needed to be seen. A year after the night Caleb heard Lydia crying, Open Door Living had 3 projects under construction and 2 more in assessment. Vale and North's occupancy and operating income improved. The division did not save the company through a miracle. It changed the company through work. Verified numbers. Better leases. Lower turnover. Buildings people wanted to remain inside. Lydia still worked too late sometimes. Caleb still carried more than he admitted. They still argued. Wren still corrected both of them with unreasonable accuracy. But Lydia no longer slept in the office. The cot behind the storage wall was removed. Her office door remained open most afternoons. The old doorstop rested on a shelf beside her father's photograph. The crooked yellow window facing outward. She listened to his voicemail less often, not because she loved him less, because his voice was no longer the only one telling her she did not have to carry the whole building. On Sundays, dinner returned to the house above the river. Not every week. Not with 16 executives around a formal table. Sometimes it was only Lydia, Caleb, and Wren eating soup in the smaller room. Sometimes Serena came. Sometimes Mrs. Larkin. Sometimes a contractor brought a spouse and stayed longer than planned. Messy things began to appear. Shoes by the door. Mail on the counter. A child's drawing attached to the refrigerator with a magnet. One cupboard Lydia kept forgetting to close. Caleb never corrected it. People later told the story as if the doorstop changed Lydia's life. That was not quite true. Objects do not change people. Kindness does not perform magic. Love does not repair every damaged system simply because it is sincere. The piece of maple did something smaller. It interrupted a pattern. A man heard pain and did not demand entry. A woman received care and was not asked to repay it. A child drew a window on scrapwood because she believed every heavy door still belonged to some kind of home. Then came the real work. The difficult conversations. The verified contracts. The apology to tenants. The investigation no one wanted. The choice to keep showing up after trust became expensive. This was not a rescue. It was refusal. Caleb refused to look away simply because looking carried risk. Lydia refused to preserve loyalty after loyalty had rotted into control. Wren refused to accept that closed doors were the natural condition of grown-up life. And together, slowly, they built something that could hold more than one person's weight. Not a perfect company. Not a perfect family. A living one. There are people who will arrive in our lives carrying no grand solution. They will not know the right speech. They may have very little to give. A ride in the rain. A contract clause someone finally bothers to read. A seat on the floor. A small piece of wood left outside a door. The gift is not that they fix us. The gift is that they make room for us to stop pretending we were meant to hold everything alone. And sometimes, when the door has been closed for so long that opening it feels more frightening than loneliness, room is enough. Years later, Wren would remember very little about the board vote or the numbers that saved Riverglen. She would remember the smell of sawdust in the basement workshop. She would remember rain on the grocery store windshield and Lydia eating pizza on the floor in clothes too formal for the room. She would remember carrying boxes into the new house and watching two adults stand in an open doorway, both frightened enough to be honest. Caleb would remember the same months differently. He would remember how close he came to saying the safe thing in the human resources meeting, how badly he wanted to promise he would never cross another boundary, never notice too much, never risk his paycheck for a stranger behind a door. He would understand that caution had its place. Boundaries mattered. Privacy mattered. But so did the kind of attention that asked for nothing in return. Lydia would remember the sound of the parcel touching the carpet outside her office, a sound she had barely noticed at the time. She would remember opening the paper, reading the unsigned sentence, and feeling angry because the words had found the exact weight she was hiding. She kept the original note inside her desk for the rest of her career, not as proof that one man had saved her, but as evidence that care could arrive without an invoice. That became the private rule behind open-door living. No one was treated as a project. No one was required to display gratitude for being given what a sound building, a fair contract, or an honest employer should have provided in the first place. Dignity was not an amenity. It was the structure. The strongest homes are often built first in the moment someone chooses to remain honest, present, and kind, when leaving would be easier. If this story reminded you of someone who stayed near without trying to control your healing, write their first name in the comments. Some people deserve to be remembered for the doors they helped us open.